Dr. Jennifer Jones, clinical psychologist and specialist in love, happiness, and parenting. Today we're talking about 5 types of violence that affect children. However, as we all know, any kind of violence affects children. Today I'm going to talk about the 5 most common types of violence, and we'll bring it up in bullet points. For more information and for the research behind the data, please visit my website, drjennifer.com. That's www.drjennifer.com. So without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss the 5 major areas of violence that affect children. The first one is very common sense. It's what you all recognize, and that's abuse. And you know, under that category, there is sexual abuse, physical abuse, and don't forget emotional abuse. And sexual abuse is common sense. Physical abuse is common sense. Let me just say, go off a little small tangent about physical abuse. In the state of California, it's considered abusive if you spank your children anywhere than with a flat hand on their bottoms. Anything else is considered physical abuse. And I would implore you actually not to spank your children at all, because although it's not legally considered physical abuse, from a neurodevelopmental perspective, it is just as harmful as physical abuse, because you're basically teaching your children to fear you. And there's nothing that erodes away at the relationship more than that, also nothing that creates more stress hormones in the brain than to actually fear your parents. A lot of us were spanked as children. I had the experience of being spanked as a child, but with the new functional MRI imaging techniques, we know that this is actually not so good. So I think with our generation, we're making a huge shift. Bravo, parents, it takes a lot of work. So abuse, that's the first one. Neglect, neglect is most commonly seen in our country with, believe it or not, babies, children under 1. Their diapers aren't being changed, they aren't being fed enough, they are left to cry without anyone paying attention to them. The irony here is that often pediatricians will recommend, that parents let their children, their babies, cry it out for the night. What pediatricians don't have the background in, and what psychologists do, is how that impacts the brain from a psychodevelopmental and neuropsychological perspective. And let me tell you, it's not so good. So don't do that. It's actually considered neglect. The other type of violence is witnessing violence, and that could be the obvious, domestic violence in the house and there's a child in the house. Just so you know, again, according to California law and law throughout most of the country, if a child is witnessing domestic violence or abuse of any kind, even if it's slapping each other, something that might not seem very big to some people, the Department of Social Services can technically remove your child from your home just for witnessing, even if that child himself is not experiencing abuse. That's how profoundly impactful that this is. So don't do that. The other kind of witnessing violence could be if there's a lot of anger in the home, if the parents or the people who are raising the child have a lot of frustrations toward each other, if there's not speaking, that's actually considered violence and has a very negative effect on a child's development, as you can imagine. In addition, I'd like to mention last 2 bullet points. Inappropriate discipline. We now know in the world of psychology, in my field, that even timeouts are really not so good for children, because it's good short term, but in the long term, it basically teaches them to be good only because they don't want to get in trouble. Also, inappropriate discipline. Spanking is very inappropriate. It's a type of violence that creates deep fear. And again, behavior only good behavior only with the hope for not getting hurt, which is all backwards. You want them to be good because they want to be good, not because they fear getting in trouble. Last thing I want to mention is pressure, the amount of pressure that we put on our children, not just us as parents, but as a society. And there's a lot of information about that. Basically, you need to ask yourself if you're bribing or threatening your child often, or if your child has any bit of anxiety. Most likely they're experiencing a lot of pressure from you or from school, and that is a form of violence in terms of brain development. More about that on my website. Come visit together. We'll figure this whole parenting thing out. drjennifer.com. Thanks so much.